Piyush Goyal, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Minister of Commerce and Industry. Your title is actually rather long. Minister of Commerce, Industry, Consumer Affairs and Food and Public Distribution and Textiles, India. You have an extraordinary portfolio. This session is entitled Sparking the Growth of Emerging Economies. And I was very much looking forward to this. Minister, to ensure that we make the very best use of our time over the next sort of 15, 20 minutes or so, I want to suggest three very specific areas for discussion. An outlook of India's commerce and investment, if you will. The very important, and certainly to this audience, very important and burgeoning bilateral trade arrangements and agreement between India and the UAE. I'm interested in the strategic value of India's alliance with the US, Israel and the UAE. I think that's fascinating. The new quad in town, as it were. And I do want to just discuss with you New Delhi's response to the war in Ukraine and the possible consequences, both economic and political, of that decision, not least with Washington. Does that all make sense? Excellent. All right. Okay, well, let's start with the first bucket, if you will. As we emerge, and we hope we are emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic, given the obviously the cloud that sort of overrides everything at the moment, but as we move out of the COVID-19 pandemic, just give me a sense of its impact on the Indian economy and a snapshot on the outlook for investment and commerce, if you will.
Well, I think India used this crisis smartly, reoriented its own perspective about business, perspective about our own internal processes, infrastructure, and in a way we converted a crisis into an opportunity. We focused on saving lives over livelihoods in the initial period, got our health systems in place to address the problems that COVID brought with it, suffered in the short run, but looked at the long-term gain that this pain would give to India, the opportunities that we would get worldwide. We believe the world recognizes that India handled the COVID pandemic well. We are
with some hurdles.
Well, hurdles would obviously be there, but I tell you, the hurdles that we hear of in very developed economies are far more serious and grave compared to India. For example, I heard about oxygen shortage in some of the very developed countries. In India, we were able to ramp up our liquid medical oxygen 10x in a short period of 4 or 5 months, rejigging our steel plants, getting nitrogen and argon containers to move oxygen, getting planes to move empty tanks and trains to move full-up tanks. A lot of ingenious activities and thinking went into fighting COVID, and everybody in the world had difficulties.
Correct.
Least of us expecting that anybody could go scot-free. In terms of our learnings, I believe the whole world today is recognizing that we need to be part of resilient supply chains. We need to be focused also in ensuring that you're not so much dependent on somebody that could affect your national economy. It could literally affect your lives. And in that sense, we have an Atmanirbhar Bharat program, a program that focuses on self-reliance, while at the same time empowers or encourages India to deal with the rest of the world with open arms, open ourselves to greater engagement with the rest of the world, but from a position of strength, from a position of confidence. And I think these learnings are what helped us to make up our mind that we need to expand our bilateral trade agreements. We have concluded probably the world's fastest ever negotiated comprehensive economic partnership in 88 days, start to finish.
Here, with the UAE.
We are in dialogue with UK, with the European Union, with Canada, with Australia, with Israel. Very soon we hope to finalize terms of reference with the GCC. So India is really looking to work with trusted partners, transparent, rules-based economies, where we feel we get a fair deal, where there's no opaque processes which can damage or hurt our businesses. We are working with partners who are sensitive to each other's problems or are considerate of the situation on the ground, who recognize that we are still an emerging market. So as we work with developed economies, they are being very sensitive to the fact that we have a $2,000 per capita income, which we hope to grow to 50,000. They're already at 50,000.
Does 8%...
We are very confident that this international engagement is going to create a lot of churn in India, but change the destiny of all Indians.
Does 8% annually over the next 20 years genuinely make sense as a forecast for economic growth? Those are the numbers that I've seen of late. And if it does, just explain to me what the pillars of growth are that you depend on for those sort of numbers.
Well, on a conservative side, certainly 8% makes a lot of sense. More so because we spent the last few years in making structural improvements in the way we work. We brought in a lot of probity and transparency in our operating processes within the government. We focused ourselves a lot on strengthening infrastructure. We focused ourselves a lot on cleaning up a lot of the baggage of the past. So, for example, our Indian banking system today is extremely robust and raring to go. Investors are looking up to India as a big opportunity. For the last 6 years, year on year, our foreign direct investment has been at a historic high, every year breaking previous records. This year, our merchandise exports has crossed $400 billion, the highest ever in India's history, with 2 waves of COVID, the second and the third, during this fiscal year, April to March. We'll close at about $410 or $415 billion. Services without travel, hospitality, and tourism is the highest ever in India's history, to about $250 billion. And all of this comes on the back of the world looking at India as a trusted partner, somebody who, through the COVID period, did not let down a single commitment we made to anybody in the world. Whatever be the challenges of transport, logistics, shipping, availability of containers, we met our commitments.
What's been the impact then of the war in Ukraine on India? How concerned are you at this clear worry about an increase in commodity prices, the inflationary effect of a war on top of what was anyway an extremely worrying global inflationary environment, coming as it does on the back of the COVID pandemic? What are your thoughts?
Becky, first of all, India and all Indians are a very peace-loving country. Right from the days of Lord Buddha or Mahavir, the Jain Tirthankars, we have always believed in peace. Mahatma Gandhi ran the whole independence movement as a non-violent movement. We believe there should be a cessation of hostilities. They should both discuss and resolve their issues, and we should have peace in the region. Our own approach is we do not see the gains or losses of war. We always believe that it will always be a loss. But at the same time, it has not affected us directly in any significant way, because our trade with these 2 countries was relatively a very small portion of our overall international trade.
There is a bigger picture here, isn't there? Because, why risk not just the ire of Washington, but the possibility of secondary sanctions when India takes the position that it does in not choosing a side? Look, clearly the opportunity to buy oil from Russia at hugely discounted prices makes economic sense, particularly at a time of rising food prices and fuel prices, which are burning a huge hole in the average Indian's pocket. But I wonder whether you will just address what must be a very delicate balancing act, given your relations, your significant relations on a political and economic basis with Washington.
Well, Prime Minister Modi has been in regular contact with all the world leaders, He has, of course, been requesting and appealing for peace in the region consistently. I believe our friendly countries across the world recognize and understand and appreciate India's balanced approach. I also believe that I think everybody will have to take a call whether everybody is willing to stop all engagement, stop all dependency on petroleum products or energy requirements before they can point fingers at each other. Meantime, so I think it's important that the world takes a fair and equitable position. And to my mind, the world recognizes India is clearly on the right, and India is clearly looking for peace in the region at the earliest.
We've got 3 minutes left. I don't know how this goes past so quickly, but it does, and we've been slightly sort of contracted in our opportunity this afternoon. So I want to close out with just 2 questions on these burgeoning regional relationships, because you name-checked a number, not least that of the UAE. So let's just drill down a little bit. Just give me a sense of the numbers. As I understand it, we're talking $100 billion of potential bilateral trade at this point. These are huge numbers. Walk me through why it is that the relationship, the bilateral relationship that we are witnessing here with the UAE makes sense, and how, and just how much substance is there at this point? Obviously, it's been one of the quickest deals that's ever been cut, so I don't expect you to tell me there's been much more than the sort of MOUs that we all know about today. But is there, you know, what's the potential for substance in this?
Becky, we started out on this arrangement because we really look upon the UAE as a strategic partner, as a country which has always stood by India as a friend. We have worked together even during the COVID period to ensure food security in India, to ensure energy security in India. We have 3.5 million persons of Indian origin in the UAE. They were looked after by our brothers and sisters in the UAE like family. We never got a single call from anybody in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in all the Emirates that they need to get back home or they're having any problem. They were taken care of by this country as much as their very own. So I think this is a relationship which has dimensions far, far beyond trade. And the trust and respect, the bond and the cultural affinity we've had over centuries is just unique. Point 1. Point 2, ever since we announced the CEPA, I've been engaging with businesses on both sides. So I'd like to tell you we've reset this $100 billion target. That's what came out of the papers initially in terms of what we got from the businesses. But let me tell you what's happened since then. This morning, I inaugurated an office of the Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council, and they told me they're going to triple the export of their products to the UAE. Yesterday, I sat with all the export promotion councils and industry associations and business persons in UAE last evening on a business exchange program, and you'll be amazed at the enthusiasm in the room. You'll be amazed to see the kind of bonhomie, the kind of commitments they were making. One sector telling me, one cotton textile telling me, we are at 2 billion, 2 years we'll be at 4 billion. And that was going around the room incessantly, which is why, and then services. Services is a huge opportunity. We have huge talent and skills in India. UAE is a gateway to not only the UAE market, but the Gulf, Africa, some parts of Europe, the CIS countries. So I've kind of reset my mind to look at much, much more ambitious targets, something close to 250 billion by 2030.
You're talking 250 billion
by 2030 in goods and services is doable. And today we had a round table between businesses on both sides. We had over $1 trillion sitting in that room in terms of market cap of the business persons there.
So if I had to get you to just delineate where the sort of top 5 sectors were that you believe could drive those sort of numbers, which will be music to the ears of many people in this room. It should be music to the ears of many people just listening to this conversation today, because we need this sort of optimism. So give me the 5 top sectors. Where do you think that action is?
Well, first of all, one big opportunity here is clearly the gem and jewelry sector I talked about, because from here, they work all across the world. Another big area that Dubai or UAE can really expand trade with India on is textiles, both man-made, cotton, and the associated leather products, footwear, that stream of products that India is very good at. And Dubai is like an entrepot, from which a trading hub from which you can go all across the world. The third major sector is pharmaceuticals. And we've made an agreement to have a melt and pour for the first time between 2 countries, which will encourage investments in UAE to set up steel plants, as well as protect India's steel business and help us to get access to newer markets from the UAE. The fourth big sector is petroleum products and the associated chain. So while we take a lot of crude oil from UAE, there'll be opportunities in UAE to set up petrochemical complexes, just like India has become a huge petrochemical giant in terms of our production abilities in the last 20, 30 years. So we look at expanding our own business there, and I think it'll open up the doors for new opportunities in the UAE. And the fifth major sector is services. I think services is an untapped area. The kind of opportunities that the UAE emerging as a financial hub, a financial district, a financial center, Fintech. All over the world, people are looking at investments flowing out of UAE. Similarly, India, with the opportunities of startups, our edtech, fintech, health tech, agri-tech, in so many areas. We already have crossed 92 unicorns. We are hoping to cross a century in the next few weeks. And in this 75th year of India's independence, we believe that we will have 75 unicorns from our startup ecosystem this year. In addition to that, as we prepare India for the Amrit Kal, the next 25 years. Amrit is nectar. It's the period of, it's a period that we have defined, the next 25 years, where we will take this country from an emerging economy to a developed economy. We want to see the prosperity of 1.35 billion Indians, give every child born in India a better quality of life, and we in India are committed to make it happen in 25 years.
What an optimistic note from the Minister joining us here today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm going to let you go to your National Day celebrations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much.